Okay, so let's check out the fig lab I've got growing here in the home office. This is where I grow out all the different figs that I get each year. So let's take a look at what I've got this year. Got them on these little trays that I can just kind of pull out. So let's see, first here we've got a Black Madeira. I started this from the tree that I've got already. It's a 2-year-old tree. These were started pretty recently. They're taking off pretty well, actually. I found the key with the Black Madeira is to keep the soil a little bit dry. They were just watered here with some fertilizer, but for the most part I try to keep them pretty dry compared to a lot of the other different varieties. Alright, next is the Basilica Sica. This is a new variety that I haven't tried before. Got this from a fellow fig grower, Bill. So this is going pretty well. You can see this was one of the trees that the fluorescent light, when I was hanging it, I have it on adjustable chains, and the chain actually broke. And there were 2 trees that had limbs break. And if you look real closely, you can see that that limb was broken right about there. And what I did is I actually put a little bit of wood glue on it and put it back into place, and then propped it up with a this little like chopstick, and you can see it actually healed, and it's putting out new leaves. There was another one along the tout that broke that wasn't quite as lucky, but this variety I'm looking forward to. It gets a lot of good reviews. Green fig with a dark red center. Hopefully it'll be pretty good. Might not get any figs this year, but next year. Moving back, I've got another Black Madeira. So this Black Madeira was actually from UC Davis. And I have 2 different varieties of Black Madeira from 2 different originations. The one was from UC Davis, and the one that I showed you earlier, this came from KK on the forums. The one from UC Davis, believe it or not, this is actually a 2-year-old tree. It's so infected with FMV, and it grows so slowly. It seems like no matter what I do, it just really will not take off. I've had it in a self-watering pot. Now I have it in a regular pot. Whether it's been outside in the greenhouse, outside in the yard, or inside in the office, it just really doesn't grow well. It'll, put on 1 node per year, and that's about it so far. I have 2 of them from UC Davis. They both do about the same. The other one's a little bit bigger, maybe double the size of this one, but not that big. Whereas the one from KK I got about the same time, and that one, the mother tree is probably 4 feet tall, and I've taken multiple air layers, multiple cuttings, and it grows real well. The next one I've got here is a Ronde de Bordeaux. It's one of my wife's favorite figs. I'm actually trying something a little different with this one. I've got it growing in a 2-liter self-watering pot. Doesn't seem to really care for it, to be honest with you. It really hasn't grown as well as some of my other ones that I'll show you when I get to the left here. But it's still alive, still kicking, and getting there. Alright, push this tray back. Alright, next tray. So there's a couple of new varieties here. The one, Maltese Falcon, I was really looking forward to this year. I got some cuttings back in, I think, November or December from Driveway Farmer. All of the cuttings I got from him rooted. They've all been doing well. This is probably one of the slowest growing of the cuttings that I got. You can see it's got some real FMV problems, and I may have taken it out of the humidity chamber a little bit early, so it's trying to recover a little bit. Moving to the left, I've got a Noor de Barbentane. It's a fig that I haven't really seen on the boards too much. I'm looking forward to trying. I believe it's a blue-black fig with a red center, which are always my favorite, so I'm looking forward to that. This one was one of the few cuttings. I started a whole bunch of cuttings in the perlite only. This was one of the few that actually survived. Not a big fan of the perlite only for growing out cuttings, so just about everything else I moved either to soil or a mix of coco coir with perlite. Behind that we have another Maltese Falcon. It's doing pretty well. And behind that is yet one more Maltese Falcon. It's closest to the window, and I think getting a lot of the sunlight, and it's really doing well back there. Alright, the next tray has some different varieties on it. This one here is new to me, not real rare to most fig growers. It's a Marcel's Black VS, MBVS. Puts out a real nice fig. It's supposed to be a little more cold hardy, so this may be one of the ones that after a couple of years I try to put in the ground. Moving to the left, I apparently haven't put a label on this one, but this one here is another MBVS. They seem to be real vigorous and grown real strong. I did put one out in the greenhouse. Doesn't seem to have cared for either the cold or the bright sun quite yet. Hasn't really taken off as well as these ones inside. Alright. Behind that is one that I'm really looking forward to this year. It's a Col de Dame Grece. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's supposed to be a gray fig. Very similar to the Col de Dame Blanco that I've had from UC Davis. Should be a really good fig this year. Kind of tucked away in the back. Let me see if I can pull it out a little bit more. I've got two new figs. One's a unknown Lake Spur cutting that was being passed around on the boards. It's really growing vigorous. Probably one of the most vigorous ones I've got. Don't know too much about that fig, but it'll be interesting to try. And then back here, if I remember correctly, this is a Violet Soles. So this is another fig that I'm really looking forward to trying. I had a few cuttings of it. It was a little bit harder to root than most. This one's doing pretty well. Not taking off real strong, but it's got steady growth, and it's really enjoying being right next to the window now that the sun's been coming out a little bit more. Alright. This tray here, again, I've got one of my favorites, Black Madeira. Trying to grow a lot of those. Didn't get an awful lot of figs off of each tree, so I'm hoping if I have a bunch of the trees I can enjoy those more. Then next to that is a Pane Vino Dark. Again, another fig I don't know too much about. Got good reviews on the board. We'll see what happens. Now here's one that's interesting. This is the Long Day Out. So this was the one that the light fell on, and whereas the other one I glued, that branch right there in the center, I didn't glue, I just kind of pushed it back together and reinforced it. And as you can see, that branch died. So that wood glue apparently makes a bit of a difference, and something I'll be trying more in the future. So this Long Day Out is supposed to be similar, if not identical, to the Melanzana that I've got out in the greenhouse. So it'll be interesting to see this year or next how similar they actually are. And then lastly, we've got another Ronde de Bordeaux. This is from my mother tree. My mother tree grew to be about 8 feet tall in just a single year last year and produced a significant amount of figs. So a real vigorous grower, a real flavorful. My wife, again, is one of her favorites. I like it. I won't say that it's my favorite, but it's decent. It produces a real pretty fig. Real cylindrical and beautiful bluish color to it with a deep red inside. So it's definitely a pretty fig. Continuing to the left, you can see this is my reduced humidity bin, and then my humidity bin. And then what I do is I usually start my cuttings in something like this, an old salad container, either with long fiber sphagnum moss or coco coir. And then once they've got some roots showing, about an inch or so long, I transfer them over to my full humidity bin. I leave this top on, and I just air it out, maybe for a couple seconds each day. And then when they start getting leaves, kind of similar to that guy right there, I move them up into this bin, where the lid is cracked quite a bit, and then I increase that crack every day to let the humidity drop to get closer to room temperature. And most of the cuttings, they look a little worn by the end of that practice, but once I up-pot them to the larger containers, they seem to pick right back up. So I do have a couple of interesting varieties in here. take that lid off. So the first one I want to take a look at is actually my Sotis Sicilian. So this is a fig that I found in the town of Sotis, New York, where it's pretty darn cold, but you know, that fig was growing strong, and the owner was an old Italian man that, you know, said he gets both a Brava crop and a main crop off of it each year. So it's hard to argue with those results. And if it's cold hardy there, it should be cold hardy here. So we're going to see. We're going to grow this for a while. I know I got figs off of the Sotis Sicilian in the greenhouse last year. They were pretty good. I've had a terrible time rooting this. I've tried rooting probably 10 different cuttings out of it, and this is the first one that really finally started to take. And you know, I don't know if you can see it, but there's roots in there, but they're definitely not very vigorous. So we'll see what happens. It's kind of been stagnant here with just a single leaf, but you know, we'll keep at it. So the next fig is a Col de Dame Grasse, and the one thing that I can say about these figs is they are absolutely vigorous. I mean, if you look at the roots on this. I mean, it is growing like crazy. So I mean, when I have that many roots, I really don't have a lot of fear of losing the cuttings, which it's actually very rare to get a lot of these thick roots like this, depending on the varieties. Some of the harder varieties really just don't get those big roots. One other guy that I'm looking forward to this year, really struggling with the cuttings. This guy here is a Nord de Barbantin. Not something you see very often, but not a real vigorous grower so far for me. I think I had 2 or 3 cuttings of this. I think the other one's all rotted with mildew within a matter of days. You can see it's got roots. They've started to harden off. Not real vigorous so far. One little guy poking out the bottom. But, you know, the top growth has been pretty slow. A couple new leaves popping out now. So that's a good sign. All you can do is keep trying. A couple other figs in there, nothing to get too excited about. Do have another Panavino. You can see that's got a real thick root starting on it. Some of these figs have been in here for a while. Here's one that I've really been struggling with. I got a couple of smaller, thinner cuttings from this guy. It's a Col de Dame Nord, and I think this is my one of 4 or 5 cuttings that I got. All have been real thin, you know, pencil size if that, and they just really haven't done well. It still has a green bud on it, but it's been in there for months and, you know, no roots yet. So I'll keep holding on to it and see what happens. That's pretty much it. The varieties up here and the humidity been going through it. I know there's a Maltese Falcon in there. There's another Ronde de Bordeaux. A couple different guys. There's a Nero 600 from my mother plant. And, you know, they're doing well. These are kind of my misfit batch. These are the ones that didn't take off quite as well as the others. They're really suffering, kind of weak. It's kind of a put up or shut up experiment with them of, you know, either they're going to get used to the humidity and they're going to start to grow, or I've already got primary ones in the 1 gallon pots to the right. So if these don't make it, then, you know, I've got the other ones at least. I do have one more cutting up top here that I'm trying to root in a slightly different way. And this is a black Zadar I got from Vito. And, you know, it was kind of a little moldy by the time I got here. I think the frost got to it a little bit. Let's see if I can get it under some light here. You can see it's starting to grow a little bit. It's got some green buds on it. It had a root that was coming out of it on the side there. It's hard to see. That root dried up. So I'm hoping there's other roots going down into the soil. Some green buds. So I've just got it in some coco coir. I probably should put a little perlite in it, but I'm keeping it kind of damp. Cup on top just keeps the humidity in. It's got a little hole in the top to get a little bit of airflow. So far it seems to be doing okay. We'll see what happens. And then I've got a Nero 600M, and what was this guy? It was an MBVS. So these were two figs that actually, the top had died back, so I actually cut them down just to where there was still a little bit of green, a little bit of growth. Just to test them out and see what happens. Not too concerned, but if they grow, great. If not, yeah, I've got other ones. And then one last thing to show you is the way I'm rooting the cuttings. So Coco Core is a new method that I've done this year I hadn't done before. Let's see if I can get it into the light here. You can see it looks kind of like coffee grounds. It's a bit fine, but it holds moisture real well. So it feels dry, but if you squeeze it, it's actually got some moisture in it. I'm hoping it'll help with some of the constant need to control moisture that we all struggle with when we're rooting these cuttings. They're in here somewhere, I promise. Let's see. Here they are. See them in there. No roots yet. I just got these, I don't know, a week or two ago from, I think these were from Harvey. Yeah, you can see these are from Harvey. Got them on the 12th. So actually, they've been in there for a little bit longer than I thought. Now, the other method, this is what I've always used up until now, which is long fiber sphagnum moss. You can see the moss is just dampened, not wet, just dampened, and then the cuttings are placed inside of here. And you can see these are, oh boy, I'm actually a little behind here. These are probably ready to be up potted. These are two black Madeiras. You can see the roots coming off of these guys. The reason people are starting to switch to the Coco Core is you can see these roots get wrapped up in this long sphagnum moss, and it can be difficult to get them out without breaking the roots. So I'll cover these back up. It's a little too late tonight. I'll up pot them tomorrow. But that's about it for now. I've got these black Madeiras, and then the ones from Harvey I think are Abribera and a what's the other one? I think it's a, boy, I can't even remember right now. It's been so long since I've looked at them. It's a Grise Barnesot or Bourgeoiset or something like that. So those are going in there. And then up here from a couple of people, I've got a Italian 258, a Black Zadar, and a couple other guys. And then over here I've got, I think, just the seconds of those same figs going in long fiber sphagnum moss and Coco Core, just to try it two different ways to hopefully get a viable fig tree out of one or two of the cuttings at least. And then one last thing, this is my rooting chamber. So once I get the roots in the Coco Core or the sphagnum moss, I'll put some figs in here too. I don't have a real good light to go over them, so they just kind of get the light left over from up top. They seem to be doing okay. I imagine that once they get some leaves out on them, I'll have to put them under better light. There's a few Panachis in here that I got from UC Davis, along with Cole Dame Blanc, and then just sort of all the other figs that I've had this year that really just haven't taken off yet. You can see that some of them have a little bit of growth peeking through finally, and there's others that are just really struggling. But you know, hopefully in a matter of time they'll pop out and form a little tree. Now with this chamber, I actually put a pen in the corner so that a little bit of air can get in there. I found that if I don't, they get quite a bit of mold growing quickly. I'm not sure why. This one has that problem, but when I look at the aquarium, maybe that lid isn't quite as tight. But for whatever reason, I never have a problem with mold in that little aquarium, even though the lid's on fully. Can't explain it. Maybe a smaller versus larger area. Not sure, but not going to take my chances with it. So that's about it, and hopefully I'll have another update once spring finally decides to show up. Alright, take care and happy Easter.